Have you ever noticed how a single piece of information can arrive at the exact moment you least expect it and quietly change the way you see everything? That is exactly what has been happening to your soulmate. Not long ago, they were focused on their own life, their own responsibilities, their own daily routine. Thoughts of the past appeared from time to time, but never in a way that felt disruptive. They believed they already understood what happened. They believed they had all the information they needed. As far as they were concerned, that chapter had been written, understood and placed where it belonged. But then something unexpected happened. They heard something about you. It was not necessarily dramatic. It may have been a simple comment, an unexpected conversation, or a piece of information that arrived completely out of nowhere. Yet the moment they heard it, something inside them paused. There was something about those words that stayed with them long after the conversation ended. While everyone else moved on, they couldn't. The information continued replaying in their mind. At first, they tried to dismiss it. They told themselves it wasn't important. They told themselves they were overthinking. But the more they tried to move past it, the more their curiosity grew. What unsettled them most was not what they heard. It was the way it made them feel. Suddenly, memories they hadn't examined in a long time began resurfacing. Moments they thought they fully understood started looking different. Questions they never considered before started appearing. For the first time in a very long time, they found themselves wondering if there were pieces of the story they never truly saw. And as that thought settled deeper into their heart, they realized something unexpected. The information they heard wasn't simply giving them a new perspective on you. It was beginning to challenge everything they thought they knew about the connection itself. And that realization is only the beginning of what is about to unfold. And listen to this, because what your soulmate heard did not simply pass through their mind and disappear. It stayed. Long after the conversation ended, long after the moment was over, they found themselves thinking about it again and again. At first, they tried treating it like any other piece of information. They told themselves it was interesting but ultimately unimportant. They assumed the feeling would fade within a few hours, or perhaps a few days. Yet the opposite happened. Instead of fading, it became more difficult to ignore. Every time they remembered what they had heard about you, a new question appeared. Every time they thought they had reached a conclusion, another possibility entered their mind. What surprised them most was how quickly their perspective began to shift. Before hearing this information, they believed they understood the story. They believed they knew why certain things happened the way they did. They believed they had already made peace with the past. But now, for the first time, they are realizing that understanding a situation and truly seeing it are not always the same thing. Sometimes a single detail can reveal an entirely different layer of meaning. Sometimes one unexpected piece of information can make years of assumptions suddenly feel incomplete. Lately, they have found themselves revisiting memories they have not thought about in a very long time. Not because they want to live in the past, but because the information they heard has made those memories feel different. Moments they once viewed one way now seem to carry another meaning entirely. Conversations that felt ordinary suddenly appear more significant. Situations they thought they fully understood now seem far more complex than they originally believed. It is as if someone handed them a missing piece of a puzzle they did not realize was incomplete. And listen to this. The questions have become impossible for them to ignore. They keep wondering whether they misunderstood certain things about you. They wonder whether they overlooked details that now seem obvious. They wonder whether the conclusions they reached years ago were based on only part of the truth. These questions do not come from confusion alone. They come from curiosity, a genuine desire to understand something that suddenly feels unfinished. The more they think about it, the more they realize how much of their perspective may have been shaped by assumptions rather than complete understanding. There have been quiet moments recently when they found themselves staring into space, replaying old memories through this new lens. What makes this experience so powerful is that they are not simply remembering the events themselves. They are reconsidering what those events meant. They are asking themselves whether there were emotions they failed to recognize, whether there were intentions they misunderstood, whether there were truths hidden beneath the surface that they never took the time to see. Every question seems to lead to another question, and every answer seems to reveal something new. What they heard about you has also caused them to reflect on themselves. This is something they never expected. They assumed the information would only change how they viewed you. Instead, it has forced them to examine their own choices, their own perceptions, and the way they interpreted the connection. They are beginning to understand that perspective is a powerful thing. Two people can experience the same moment and walk away with completely different understandings of what happened. And lately, they cannot stop wondering whether their understanding was ever complete. The strange thing is that they are not feeling regret in the way most people imagine. What they are feeling is awareness. Awareness of how much there still is to understand. Awareness of how easily important truths can be missed when someone believes they already know the whole story. Awareness that some connections continue teaching us lessons long after they seem to have ended. This awareness has been quietly growing inside them with every passing day. And listen to this, because one realization keeps returning no matter how hard they try to move on from it. If this one piece of information changed their perspective so dramatically, what else might they have failed to see? What other parts of the story remain hidden beneath the assumptions they carried for so long? That question has become the center of everything. It follows them during quiet moments. It appears when they least expect it. And the more they reflect, the more they realize that what they heard about you was not just information. It was a doorway leading them toward a deeper understanding of the connection, a deeper understanding of the past, and perhaps most importantly, a deeper understanding of feelings they thought they had already figured out. And as those realizations continue unfolding, they are beginning to see your connection in a way they never have before. And listen to this, because the more your soulmate reflects on what they recently heard, the more they realize that it did not simply change a few opinions. It changed the way they see the entire story. There was a time when they believed the past was fixed. Certain memories had already been categorized. Certain moments had already been explained. Certain conclusions had already been accepted. In their mind, everything made sense. Maybe not perfectly, but enough to allow them to move forward. Yet now, as they revisit those same memories, they are discovering something unexpected. The past looks different when viewed through new understanding. What has been surprising them lately is how many small details suddenly stand out. Things they barely noticed before now seem impossible to ignore. A conversation they once considered ordinary now feels layered with meaning. A moment they dismissed as insignificant now appears far more important. Even certain reactions and choices that once confused them are beginning to make sense in ways they never expected. It feels as though someone adjusted the focus of a lens they have been looking through for years. The events themselves have not changed, but the meaning behind them suddenly feels completely different. There have been moments when they found themselves replaying old interactions in their mind and thinking, how did I miss that? Not because they were careless, not because they lacked intelligence, simply because they were viewing everything through the understanding they had at the time. Now that understanding is changing, and with every new realization, another piece of the puzzle seems to fall into place. The more they reflect, the more they recognize that there may have been emotions, intentions, and truths present all along that they never fully appreciated. And listen to this. One of the most powerful realizations they are having right now is that perspective can completely transform memory. A memory that once felt simple can suddenly become meaningful. A situation that once felt confusing can suddenly become clear. A connection that once seemed straightforward can suddenly reveal layers that were hidden beneath the surface. This is exactly what is happening to your soulmate. The information they heard about you has become a key, unlocking doors they never even realized existed. Recently, they have started noticing patterns that escaped their attention before. Certain moments that seemed unrelated now appear connected. Certain choices now make more sense. Certain emotional responses that once puzzled them now feel understandable. It is almost as if they are discovering a second version of the story that was quietly waiting beneath the first one. And what makes this experience so emotional is that it forces them to question assumptions they carried for a very long time. For years, they believed they understood why certain things unfolded the way they did. They believed they understood your perspective. They believed they understood the connection. But now they are beginning to see that understanding another person is far more complicated than they once thought. People carry feelings they do not always express. People have reasons they do not always reveal. People experience situations in ways that cannot always be seen from the outside. And lately, your soulmate has been wondering how much of your experience remained invisible to them. This realization has brought with it a surprising amount of humility. Instead of feeling certain, they feel curious. Instead of assuming they know all the answers, they find themselves asking questions they never asked before. Questions about your thoughts, questions about your emotions, questions about moments they thought they fully understood. Every answer they discover seems to lead to another layer of meaning. Every reflection seems to reveal another possibility they had never considered. And listen to this, because there is one thought that keeps returning to them over and over again. What if the connection was deeper than I realized at the time? That question has become impossible to ignore. Not because it provides immediate answers, but because it changes the direction of their thinking. Instead of looking at the connection as something they already understand, they are beginning to view it as something they are still learning from, something that still has lessons to offer, something that still contains truths waiting to be uncovered. What they heard about you has done something they never expected. It has transformed certainty into curiosity. It has turned assumptions into questions. It has encouraged them to revisit parts of the past they believed were already settled. And the more they do, the more they realize that they may have been seeing only part of the picture all along. That realization is both unsettling and fascinating, because if they misunderstood certain things before, then there may be even more waiting to be discovered. Now they find themselves standing in a place they never anticipated. A place where old memories feel new again. A place where familiar moments seem filled with hidden meaning. A place where the connection itself appears larger, deeper, and more significant than they once believed. And as this new perspective continues unfolding, they can feel something changing inside them. The story they thought was complete is no longer complete. The answers they thought they had are no longer enough. And for the first time in a very long time, they are beginning to understand that what they recently heard about you may have revealed only the beginning of a much greater truth. And listen to this, because what began as simple curiosity has now become something far more personal for your soulmate. At first, they believed the information they heard about you was just an interesting detail, something worth thinking about for a short time before moving on. But that is not what happened. Instead, the more they reflected on it, the more deeply it affected them. What they expected to be a passing thought slowly became a constant presence in their mind. They found themselves returning to it during quiet moments, replaying it while going about their day, and thinking about it late at night when everything else was silent. The reason for this is simple. What they heard did not just give them new information about you. It awakened emotions they thought had already settled long ago. Recently, they have been asking themselves a question they never expected to ask again. Why does this matter so much to me? At first, they tried to answer logically. They told themselves they were simply surprised. They told themselves anyone would be curious after learning something unexpected. But those explanations only scratched the surface. Deep down, they know this reaction goes beyond curiosity. If it were only about information, the feeling would have faded by now. Instead, it continues growing stronger. Every reflection seems to carry more emotional weight than the last. Every memory they revisit feels more significant than it did before. What surprises them most is how quickly old feelings have started resurfacing. Feelings they assumed had become distant. Feelings they believed had already been understood and processed. They are not necessarily the same emotions they felt years ago. They are deeper now, more mature, more reflective. Instead of reacting from impulse, they are observing with awareness. And through that awareness, they are beginning to recognize how much this connection truly impacted them. Certain moments they once overlooked now carry emotional significance. Certain memories now seem connected to lessons they are only beginning to understand. And listen to this. There have been times recently when they tried to focus on other things, only to find their thoughts returning to the same place. Not because they wanted them to, not because they were intentionally dwelling on the past, but because the perspective they have gained refuses to leave them alone. It has become part of the way they see the connection now. The more they try to ignore it, the more obvious it becomes. The more they attempt to dismiss it, the more meaningful it feels. This has created an internal conflict they were not prepared for. Part of them wants to continue moving forward exactly as they always have. That part reminds them that life does not stop. It reminds them of responsibilities, goals, and everything waiting ahead. But another part of them feels compelled to understand what is happening. It wants answers. It wants clarity. It wants to know why this new perspective feels so important. For the first time in a very long time, they are realizing that understanding the connection matters more to them than they previously admitted. As these emotions continue unfolding, they are beginning to see something they could not see before. The information they heard did not create new feelings. It revealed feelings that were already there, hidden beneath assumptions. Hidden beneath time, hidden beneath the belief that everything had already been figured out. What they are experiencing now is not the creation of emotion, it is the uncovering of emotion. And that distinction changes everything. There have been moments when they caught themselves wondering how differently they might have viewed certain situations if they had possessed this understanding earlier. Not because they are trapped in regret, but because clarity naturally causes reflection. When people finally see something clearly, they often revisit the moments when that clarity was missing. Your soulmate is doing exactly that. They are looking back and recognizing details they overlooked, emotions they underestimated, and truths they failed to appreciate. And every realization seems to deepen the emotional impact even further. What makes this stage so powerful is that they can no longer pretend the information had no effect on them. The effect is undeniable. It has changed the way they think. It has changed the way they remember. It has changed the way they feel. Most importantly, it has changed the way they understand the connection itself. What once seemed like a closed chapter now feels unfinished. What once felt certain now feels open to new interpretation. And as this shift continues growing inside them, they are beginning to realize something remarkable. The information they heard about you was not merely a revelation about the past. It was a catalyst that awakened emotions, questions, and insights they never expected to experience again. And now, standing in the middle of that transformation, they are approaching a realization that has the power to change everything they thought they knew about you, about themselves, and about what this connection was truly meant to teach them. And listen to this, because your soulmate is finally reaching the point where all the questions, all the reflections, and all the emotions are beginning to come together. For a while, they believed the information they heard about you was simply a surprising discovery. Then they believed it was an opportunity to better understand the past. But now, they are realizing it was much more than either of those things. What they heard did not just give them a new fact to think about. It shifted the foundation of how they viewed the entire connection. It challenged assumptions they had carried for years. It forced them to reconsider memories they thought were fully understood. And most importantly, it opened their eyes to truths that had been hiding in plain sight all along. What has become clear to them is that the emotional impact of this experience was never really about the information itself. If it were only about learning something new, the intensity would have faded by now. Instead, the information acted like a key. It unlocked something inside them. It revealed feelings they had not fully explored and perspectives they had never considered. The reason it affected them so deeply is because it touched something that was already there. Something that had been quietly waiting beneath the surface for the right moment to be recognized. Lately, they have found themselves looking back at the connection with a level of honesty they have never had before. Not through the lens of pride, not through the lens of assumptions, not through the lens of what they thought happened. Instead, they are looking at it with openness. They are allowing themselves to consider possibilities they once dismissed. They are allowing themselves to acknowledge that there may have been more depth, more meaning, and more significance than they realized at the time. That willingness to see things differently has transformed the way they understand everything. And listen to this. One of the biggest realizations they are having right now is that perspective shapes reality more than most people realize. For years, they were looking at the connection through one perspective, believing it was the complete picture. Now they understand that every story contains layers. Every connection contains unseen emotions. Every experience contains truths that may not become visible until much later. What they recently learned about you helped them uncover one of those hidden layers. And once they saw it, they could not unsee it. This has also changed the way they think about themselves. The information did not just reveal something about you. It revealed something about their own journey. It showed them how easy it is to carry assumptions without questioning them. It showed them how often people believe they understand a situation when they are really seeing only part of it. Most importantly, it taught them that growth sometimes arrives through unexpected revelations. Sometimes a single piece of information can create years of understanding in a matter of days. There have been moments recently when they simply sat with these realizations, allowing everything to settle into place. During those moments, they began understanding why this experience affected them so profoundly. It was not because the information changed who you are. It was because it changed how they saw you. And once that perspective changed, everything connected to the relationship began changing with it. Memories felt different. Emotions felt different. Even the meaning of certain events seemed different. The past itself had not changed, yet their understanding of it had evolved completely. As this new clarity continues growing, they are no longer focused on what they missed. They are focused on what they understand now. That shift is important because it moves them away from confusion and toward acceptance. They are no longer trapped in old assumptions. They are no longer limited by incomplete interpretations. Instead, they are embracing a broader and more honest understanding of what the connection truly meant. And the more they do, the more peaceful they feel. What makes this moment so powerful is that they are finally seeing the connection as it really was, rather than as they once believed it to be. That distinction has changed everything. The information they heard about you was not the final answer. It was the beginning of a deeper truth. A truth that continues unfolding every day. A truth that is helping them understand why certain memories stayed with them, why certain emotions never completely disappeared, and why this connection continues to matter in ways they never expected. Now they stand in a place of clarity they never thought they would reach. The questions that once consumed them are being replaced with understanding. The assumptions that once guided them are being replaced with awareness. And the perspective they recently gained has become something they can no longer ignore. Because after everything they have reflected on, one realization rises above all the others. What they heard about you did not simply change their opinion. It changed their understanding of the connection itself. And now that they finally see it differently, they know they cannot return to the way they viewed it before. The information was not an ending. It was the beginning of a completely new chapter of understanding, one that is still unfolding, and one that may ultimately reveal just how important this connection has always been.